But as you know, marketing and brand are often a bit at ends with each other, because brand is about often, right, consistency and trying to figure out like what is the through line that ties together the work, how is it recognizable and understandable. And marketing, specifically in the age of internet technology and performance, is about to create as many different articulation as possible so you can stand out. So we sit in this world where we're creating these guidelines, strict rules, and then almost breaking them at the same time.
Brand and product at Spotify seem to be on par, and it seems like in many technology companies, the product is the king and the brand is just the thing that supports the product. How can you talk a bit about the rebrand and how the brand and the product sort of sit next to each other and live next to each other?
I had the opportunity to come in, like I said, in 2016, at the time where the small internal team we had just kind of finished the first version iteration of that guideline together with Collins, right? So I came in and I remember, I think it was photography and illustration was the two things that we still had to figure out exactly how we articulate for our brand, right? So I came in and got to know Collins, Ben and Brian and all those guys through that process, and like, oh my god, they're so talented, and it was such a joy working with them, and we had this really healthy relationship of trusting them, because we knew what outside perspective they could give us, and then we could just kind of again apply, well, this is what we need in order for us to make sense of this. So that was amazing, right? Needless to say, like, none of the work we're actually creating right now looks particularly like you would find in the guideline that Collins created. And I think, Ben talked about that, and Brian have talked about that many times before. Their ambition is not sort of to tell us what to do, is to enable us to do things, right? And I think that's a really healthy way of collaborating with a design studio and a brand. So again, that comes with having the right people on the inside. And so again, like, having a set of really talented designers that can take an idea of a design system and then really run with it and create work that makes sense for the audience, or the brief or the initiative that you're doing. They gave us things like burst and duotone and all these kind of things that we don't necessarily use very much. So we spend our day really like formulating this brand and exploring new ways it can come to life from the base that they created. Uh, but we have evolved a lot, and I think they passed the baton over to our internal team to take it there, and now we have a really strong way of looking at how we create work, and it's taken us quite some time to get there. But I think it all starts with, like, how do you have the initial key to be able to turn the lock, and they gave us that, and then we've been running with it and having so much fun exploring what this brand means to us.
It sounds like you gave yourself the same freedom that you give your local offices and agencies with the brand. So you took their intention and their seed, and then you applied it to your world with your relevance and your lens, understanding what you know, which is obviously much deeper than what they know, but they can lift it to a point, and then you can go, oh, I see it now. Like, I can pick that up. I can take that. I can run with it. I can build on it.
I think another thing that's really interesting as well is that within our team, we handle two major work streams, and specifically when it comes to design. So we handle the brand work, which are things like now guidelines and sub brands and logos and brand architectures and consultation on the brand itself. But then we also handle art directions for all of our biggest campaigns globally. So Wrapped would be an example. And then we also create key initiatives like playlists that we want to turn into bigger brands and that needs their own branding. But as you know, marketing and brand are often a bit at ends with each other, because brand is about consistency and trying to figure out what is the through line that ties together the work, how is it recognizable and understandable. And marketing, specifically in the age of internet technology and performance, is about to create as many different articulation as possible so you can stand out. So we sit in this world where we're creating these guidelines, strict rules, and then almost breaking them at the same time, which is a super interesting function of a team. Because if we had one team that was just focusing on the brand and then another team that would focus on art directions for marketing campaigns, I think there would be much more tension. But because you have one team that sort of sits and does both, we do tend to be able to stretch the brand as well as we're able to contain the marketing. And at Spotify, because we have a lot of different products and services and sub brands, we had to really take a step back and think about how do we, what are the things that are consistent and what are the things that could flex. And it's almost like we think about it as a family that all represent the same last name, but they all show up with different personalities. You know, they have different tastes and they sort of have different voices even sometimes, but they all represent something. And then figuring out what is that something, like how do we manifest that last name and how does that come to life? And it's definitely very challenging. And I think specifically where we are today, all the different places a brand needs to show up, the amount of content you need to create on an everyday basis, because people are experiencing and consuming content like crazy. It is very tricky, but it's a challenge we embrace and we have fun with.
You're sort of building this quality brand, but Spotify is essentially a technology company. And I'm going to assume that you have a flood of data feeding back to you all the time. How do you build a brand, which, like you said earlier, requires consistency and at the speed of technology, which changes daily, weekly, monthly? And if you look back at over a year, it's completely different to what we went in the year with as to what we leave on the other side. How do you balance those two?
Yeah, and that's really the challenge. I agree with you. And we don't know what tomorrow might bring, an acquisition or a new initiative or something that fundamentally challenges the way that we've even set up the brand. So you have to be flexible enough to almost being able to accommodate to anything and figuring out a way to make sense of it. I think you have to start with a set of guiding principles of defining what is it that your brand obviously like stand for, and what are you trying to do, and how does that come to life? How does that can then transfer into, so for design, what are some principles that we can almost always apply to our brand to make sure if it feels Spotify or not? So we at Spotify landed on simple, graphic, and colorful. So we can almost like look at all the work we're doing and see, does it hit on those three things? Then it's probably feels Spotify. And so simple, right? Like take out all the details as much as possible. Photography and illustration, as how simple can we get with it, with personality still, obviously. Graphic is another way of saying maybe imperfect, or, if you're shooting a photo, don't put the camera in the front, like move it up, create some interesting angles, work with illustrators that don't have this style that you see in all the different tech companies right now. Like find interesting people to work with and collaborate with, and create work that feels a little avant-garde and that feels different, so that you can show up in an unexpected fashion. And I think Wrapped is a perfect example of that. Every year we're trying to come out with a completely different, unexpected version of Wrapped. And colorful, I think, when Spotify first started, it was green, white, and black. And for many years, all the communication around Spotify was also green, white, and black. And got to a point where, we had to draw a line in the sand and be like, well, we're not the tech company. well, we are, but we're not. We're really a music and audio culture company, that has a technology piece with it, but that's not all Spotify is, right? So looking at the world of music and the artists and the art that's being created around that was some of the most colorful and exciting work in the world. Now, how do we tap into that? And so simple, graphic, colorful became three fundamentally important words for us that we could apply to all of the design work we were doing. And obviously within that, there's a lot of other nuances as well to make sure that it feels right and it's appropriate. But I think starting there and having an idea of like, what are your main principles, and then going down from there is a good way to start.
Hello YouTube, I'm Ross Drakes, I'm the founder of Nicework, and thank you so much for your time at watching this video. If you're seeing me, it means you made it all the way to the end, so we've at least done something right. If you enjoyed this, we'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and that thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And I think more important than that is if you know someone who might need to hear this, if you think someone out there who needs this message in their life, please spread the link, because it makes a huge difference to the world, and it allows us to fulfill our message of making sure that there are no more bad brands in the world. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you in the next video.